Hey, today we're making a full-scale speeder bike. I don't know what else to say. Let's go. How's it going? Anthony Farrell here, Crazy SCI-FI. Today I'm doing a full-scale speeder build. This was just crazy. I'm so happy with the way it turned out. It's based on a sawhorse, right? And this is very sturdy. This is for the Star Wars fan film. So it's PVC plastic, which I bought years ago for a Mandalorian build, like a Boba Fett, never did, but shaped plastic, foam, hardware store, Amazon, dollar store. So this is a real mashup of affordability and like these control panels. I did a 3D printing video months ago about making control panels, and these are the mistakes, right? But I was able to repurpose them for this. All right, so lots going on. So let's get into this build.
And away we go. Now, what I really love about this build and what I like about doing this sort of thing is like, at its core, it's very simple, right? It's a sawhorse, right? It's a basic wooden sawhorse. And now we're gonna build a speeder bike around this, right? Like a very sort of futuristic. And at this point, you know, it's like, what? And these are like my favorite kind of projects, right? Where it's like, it's a deep dive, right? It's like, this is not easy. This is going to be a lot of work. And I definitely resisted doing this for months. And sort of, this was the last major project I had to do for my Star Wars fan film that I'm printing, right? So I got the sawhorse from the hardware store. I think it was like $27. And then I just got a small sheet of plywood, right? I just needed like this quarter piece. So now what I'm doing is I'm just making my foundation, right? So the seat is the main thing, because the whole idea of the sawhorse was it has to be something that a grown man, adult man, can sit on and not be uncomfortable and not worry about it. You know, it has to be sturdy, right? And they're like, the guy weighs half as much as me, right? So I know it's going to be fine. So here I'm figuring out like where the handlebars are going to be, right? And then if you're not videotaping yourself for a YouTube channel, which most people are not, it was helpful for me in this build to go back and review the footage and sort of determine where things were going to be positioned, right? So here I'm cutting out a poster board, sort of these front struts, right? These front sort of handlebar components that are, again, part of the core of the thing. So really it's the seat, the saddle, right? The sitting structure and the handlebars. And then everything else is going to be built around there. So to make these more sturdy, I'm just putting some holes in. I'm going to put a piece of PVC pipe in here. And then this is the handlebars, right? So here we have the very basic, right? The core, we have the seat, the handlebars, and then next will be, you know, where you put the feet. And then from there, it's just skinning it, putting the flesh on, right? So glue, wood, screws. The glue is stronger than the screws, right? But you do both so that you can move on. You know, this is just basic wood glue, but wood glue is very strong. And then there you see I have it clamped up, and you know, it's pretty messy because this is an underpiece. It's not like a finished piece. So here, this is what I was talking about. I went back to the video, took screen grabs, and I sort of built it around, okay, we have this new Mandalorian one. I knew I wanted to do like a bobber. And then this was my first sort of initial sketch of what I thought it could look like. You know, it's gonna change, but you gotta have that roadmap, right? So here I had determined where, I think it was 10 inches back and like 9 inches up. And I just wanted to position these foot pegs correctly. So there I'm coming from left to right. I end up going from right to left, but you know, I'm just working this out. So here with the Dremel tool, I just cut this piece of steel in half. It's funny how things happen lazily because my hacksaw was dull, so I used the Dremel. So here, these are just mountain bike pedals. Just bought those on Amazon. And now what I'm doing is I'm mounting the pedals. Now there's steel. It's just a strip of steel that you can buy at any hardware store. You know, I think it's like $7, but I wanted to make sure that this was secure, right? So here I'm doing 3 screws into the leg of my sawhorse. And I got the pedal attached on there. I did that off camera. And, you know, this has to be strong. This has to be sturdy, right? So this is like nuts and bolts. Usually I'm doing like prop things that are facades. This is like practical, like a human's gonna be sitting on this. It has to be strong, right? So that's bolted in there. So now we can start to get to the fun part. So because I'm creating this whole skin from scratch, what I did is I went to the dollar store and bought a bunch of poster paper. And here what I'm doing, like this is a painstaking process, but I've learned over the years, like you make templates, make them out of cardboard, do that first. Then once you have that, then you can apply that and sort of translate that to your expensive materials that the final piece is going to be on. So now I'm just creating the shape, and it's almost like sculpting, I guess. So here I'm using the tape to start to create my lines, right? So I had the idea from the Photoshop document of what I wanted to do, but now is where it starts to take on a life of its own, right? So I'm looking at this in real time, and I'm thinking, all right, this kind of wants to go here. And then now I'm creating sort of this back piece where I know that that's where the engines is going to be. And then now that I'm looking at it, you know, in full scale, you can start to get an idea of the lines. And, you know, this thing's supposed to be flying through the air. So in the back of my head, you know, it has to be aerodynamic looking in a little bit. And again, right now I'm just making my templates, right? And I think even after I make these, I still make adjustments, right? So that front is a lot longer than it ended up being, but for now, like we're getting there, right? It's a process. So now I have these templates, and now this plastic is a PVC plastic. It's a little thicker than styrene. And I bought this, ironically, originally about a year ago, where I was gonna make a full Boba Fett costume, and it was going to be out of this plastic, but I ended up not doing that. So here, you know, it's like styrene. Like I said, it's a thicker PVC plastic, and you basically just cut it with the X-Acto knife, and then you could just crack it open, right? So here, now I have my pieces, and I'm just starting to think about placement and shaping. You know, it's like, you know, we're building a vehicle. So now I'm taking the heat gun, and that's what's great about this product is, you know, you can melt it, bend it, sort of shape it, but then it's still rigid, right? Like once it cools. So it was perfect for this. So now I'm doing the front, sort of the gas tank. And as you can see from my hat there, this was Christmas Day. Because what else are you going to do on Christmas Day during lockdown? So I was doing this, and here I'm just tacking some nails just so that I can sort of get the ball rolling, right? I'm going to come back later and apply that with screws, but now I'm just sort of shaping this. And again, like I said, this is very much like sculpting. So there is the body, right? So I'm like, okay, that's looking good. So here from the not the hardware store, this is from the dollar store, I have these hose sprayer things, and these are going to be perfect handles for my handlebar. So I just fit those in there. Again, this is something like I imagined, but now it's like, yep, that's going to work. It's got little levers, little doodads. So that is there. And you can see my shop is not that big. There's the Mando costume. So now with these front forks, for a while I contemplated making them removable. And I think that would have been a better option. But, you know, I just do this stuff myself. It's like, it would have been too complicated. So here I just, you know, set a straight line, so I know these are straight. And, you know, off camera, I did some research, and the front forks, I realized, looking at pictures of like the original speeder bike, they're about a third, right? So the body is 2/3 and the fork is 1/3. So I roughly based it on that. It seems a little short, but, you know, that's all the reference images that I checked out. That's what it was. So I'll end up sort of fudging it a little when I put the front fins on there, but this is like a good starting point. So that's PVC pipe and wooden dowel, and, you know, with the wooden dowel I just screwed it. So now I'm just starting to attach things more permanently. That's with a screw, and, you know, I'm cutting off here. That's what I said. It was like, okay, now that we're halfway in this, it's like these need to be shorter, right? And then, you know, that's just a basic thing. So now this front piece, you know, there's a lot of things that were complicated with this. So now I'm making templates. This is for the fins. And again, this is original shape of mine. and this is all just inspired, I'm trying to make it like look like a speeder bike from this Star Wars universe, but then I'm just making it my own, right? And making it my own is not so much a desire to create my own speeder bike as it is more just practical. Like, these are the materials that I have. This is the budget that I have. What can we do, right? So this shape is roughly based on the original speeder bike. And here again, paper templates. I'm just figuring out, okay, this can go here. And, how is this working, right? And I realized, okay, at first I had it blunted, but then I was like, no, it needs more of like a point, right? And just it's an illusion of making it aerodynamic, I guess, right? So here I'm transferring the pattern to the PVC plastic. And all the time when I make dotted lines, that's just sort of a basic reference for me that when I heat it up, I know where to bend it. And typically, it's just the heat gun, just from the home center. And I'll use like a 2x4 or 1x3, whatever kind of scrap wood I have laying around to kind of get the bend angle, right? So I had to make sure right and left, because tell me why. I'll tell you why, because, I have messed those up before. You bend it and then you go and you're like, oh, I bent them both the same way, 2 left feet. So here, I'm just heating up the plastic. I do have a respirator on. This stuff is a little nasty once you heat it up. And I'm just, just bending it. And just what I've found over the years of doing this stuff is, I have a very specific idea in mind here. I'm being deliberate, but, don't get too precious, right? It's like we're just bending this. They're both not going to be exact, right? But, like I said, this is a film piece, right? You're never going to see both sides at the same time. You're only going to see it from one side or the other, right? So, but having said that, I do the best I can to make everything sort of book matched, but you got to do what you got to do. So there I screwed it on because I knew I would be covering that with some foam. Typically, you don't want to see Phillips head screws in anything that's Star Wars. So now this is interesting. This is the base for a planter pot that you put outdoors, right? Like a terracotta pot, and this catches extra water. And I just was at the hardware store. This was $5. I was like, okay, here's like my engine, right? So I'm cutting this in half, and just giving like a 3-dimensional, because I noticed like there's just a little hint, a little sneak of an engine in a lot of the speeder bikes that I saw. This is just a vacuum hose. I went on Amazon, just bought a replacement vacuum cleaner hose. I think it was like $10. And now here I'm making some tabs out of the scrap PVC plastic. So I'm going to glue these tabs to my engine, and then that's going to allow me to screw it to the underside, right? This is all just very practical, very basic. And then there you see I'm just screwing it in. But like I say all the time on this channel, when I'm making it for film, I really, really want it to be like double strength, right? You don't want to break it down. And there you go. And that's, that's the engine. That's just going to be zooming by, and it's good. So now I have the 5-minute epoxy. Going to epoxy in these handlebars. In hindsight, it didn't stick that well. I probably should have used JB Weld, which is for metal and plastic. This is just, plastic, but, it was fine. So now I'm creating this front piece. Now we're starting to fill the holes, right? Like I have my core structure going on here, and now it's like, okay, let's build this thing out, right? More tape templates, right? Cardboard templates, tape templates, all these things that just make it easier, right? And it's added steps. It's like a lot more work, but I've just learned the hard way that in the big picture, it's less work because, if you just wing that, you put it on, then doesn't fit right. You do it again, and then you run out of material and you waste a day and you got to go buy material. Here, it's like, I have this, I know this is going to fit. And then once you get in the zone, it's just like bing, 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 keep it going, keep it going. Like this was a very long project. Like at this point, I'm probably into week 2. And again, I say this a lot, and this might not make sense 2 years from now, but this is a lockdown project, right? Like I wouldn't have had this kind of time if we weren't in the COVID lockdown, right? So basically this was around the holidays, and I just treated this like it was my full-time job. I went into the garage like 8 hours a day for like 2 weeks. So, know what it takes to do a project like this. Or, if you're just doing it without a deadline, you could probably do it in your garage like over a few months. So here I know I'm going to cut out these holes, and they're just going to be sort of like for wind passing through, like who knows what the real reason is for those. It's just an aesthetic thing I'm just adding. And I had that scrap sort of mesh. So I'm just cutting out these holes. I'm going to add the mesh, and then, this is going to just add value once it's all painted, right? You won't barely notice it, but, it'll be there. So now I'm just cleaning up the edges with my Dremel tool, sanding it up so that it'll accept paint and glue. And then here, just super glue. Lots of super glue on this project. With the super glue, I always say I like to use the kicker because that keeps the ball rolling. And then here, right, it's the same process like I showed you earlier. Heat it, bend it, glue it, and then now, the body starts to take shape. And again, too, it's like once this is glued down, you got to step back and look at it, and maybe your original idea needs to be adjusted or modified or maybe not. And I think, what happens here is, by the way, I wouldn't recommend that bare hand. Put a glove on. But that's what happens, right? I was in the zone. And then here, like sometimes what's cool about this plastic is it wasn't quite perfect, but you could sand it off. But then there off camera, you could see that little ball cap there, right? So that just happened quickly off camera because I was looking at the profile and I was like, something's missing. And I was like, oh, it needs this. And then it just happened and I didn't film it, but you get the idea. So now another template. So this is going to be the back engine compartment, right? So I know I have these like from the hardware store, I have these baskets. I think they're for like irrigation or like for your lawn. And I want to place these in here. So this, I think, all right, let me, I have this 10 millimeter EVA foam. I decide to make this out of the foam just so that I can have an easier time and have a better fit up with these sort of recessed plastic baskets, water. I think they're like for drainage. So here I'm just finding my center line. Always got to find the center line and just figuring out where these go. And what I like about this is the depth of sort of the lip on this is just about the same as the foam. So here I'm just carefully cutting out the holes, and then, I'm going to be able to glue everything in. And then it's nice to make this as a separate unit then that I will just later install into the tailpiece of the speeder bike, right? So cooking along, and that's what was nice about doing with the foam. Like, I don't think it's captured here, but it's like it didn't quite fit, so I just had to make it a tiny bit bigger. And then now I'm hitting this with the hot glue. And like I said, it was just a nice sort of reprieve to be able to just sit at my workbench and take a minute to do this, because that other build was so much on the floor and in the workshop, is a big project. So now I have this as its own unit. I just hot glue and screw this into the back there. So it's a lot of hot gluing, wood gluing, screws, super glue. And then, yeah, that looks good. And then again, off camera, you see that bottom lip. Same process, piece of tape, made a template, cut a piece of plastic, and then that just, because it felt like it needed that. So here, this is interesting because this is a nice detail. It'll be like a raised 3-dimensional detail, but it's motivated by having to cover up those screws, right? So I just cut off quickly another piece of 10 millimeter foam, and I'm just going to glue that on there, and it gives it nice sort of dimensionality. But the real reason is, you can't have Phillips head screws and washers in a futuristic. So now I have this back panel, and anytime with EVA foam, you just can't spray paint it. You have to put either Plastidip or, in this case, I'm using Mod Podge. And any piece of foam I have on here now, which I have a piece in the front, and I think off camera, I went and anywhere I had a screw, I just put like a little triangle of foam. And then there, so now, I'll be able to put spray paint over that, right? And then that was wood, so I Mod Podged that. So then off camera, this was a mistake off camera, I did Bondo, right? So I just have those two pieces. The main reason for doing the Bondo was where, you know, I guess we could call it the gas tank and the seat connect, that was 2 pieces of plastic with hard angles. So the Bondo, what that allows me to do is just make it look like it's all one smooth piece, right? Now the thing is, you know, I'm not going to kid you, like, this is a film prop, right? So this might not survive after the film shoot. Like, on the film shoot, I think I have like 3 shots that require this, and right there, that Bondo, when I'm filing now, there's a really, really good chance that that could crack, right? So I go off camera, I add more Bondo, and then I add some filler, and who knows, like, this could crack, but, you know, like I say all the time, broken record for these film props, I just need it to work for 2 hours on that day. So now this was satisfying to me. You know, a few videos back, I made these control panels, these SCI-FI control panels. It was sort of a 3D printing project. And because I was new to 3D printing, I had a lot of mistakes, but they were like half finished. So I saved these mistakes and you put them in the bin. And this is why you put them in the, you know, sort of your treasure trash bin, right? So I was able to repurpose these and put them as like just some sort of control panel. I just wanted something on there. And yeah, just for me personally, this was very satisfying, right? Because it was like, I'm not a hoarder. I'm smart. And that looks good. So now I did the final sanding, and now we got to hit the whole thing with primer. Now this is a very exciting moment. So while that's drying off camera, I made this gun barrel. I 3D printed. It's from a Han Solo blaster. I just resized it. And this is just a piece of, I think it's like for like a toilet. It just got this off of, out of the hardware store. I'm adding this piece because especially my guy is like a bit of a sort of cowboy, I guess. So I wanted his speeder bike to definitely have a gun in it, right? So this was just, I'm in the zone now. I just took this piece of toilet pipe, cut a hole, screwed it in there, bent a piece of plastic, that lip there, again, just as an afterthought, right? So I'm not trying to be sort of blasé, like, oh, this is how, but this is really how it happens at this point, right? So it's not a like, do this, this, and this. I'm sharing with you the process of like, once you get there, it's kind of starts to dictate to you what needs to happen, right? So now I have a coat of primer, and then I primered the whole thing black because I kind of want that blacked out look for this. So what I'm doing now is, you know, the majority of the bike is this primer black, right? And then what I'm doing there, I always do this off camera. This is an opportunity to show you. Anytime I mask something off, whatever shirt I'm wearing, you put the masking tape on your shirt. And what that does is it makes it, you know, it picks up a little lint or whatever, and it makes it less tacky. So you have less a chance of like pulling off your paint. So here I just have paper, and I'm painstakingly going through and just covering up all of this that I just painted, right? So like 90% of it I have to cover because I'm going to paint a lot of detail pieces with the gloss black, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and go over that and probably use graphite and some other things. So even though it takes a long time, again, I've talked about this big picture. Let's say I didn't take, you know, an hour and a half to tape off this whole thing. And then I'm spraying the black, and I just so easily just boom, you know, I hit something wrong with it. Then I got to repaint and sand. So it's like, you know, and then, you know, the cliche, ask me how I know, because I've been there. So there it is, right? A poorly wrapped Christmas present. It is Christmas time. So now everything that's exposed gets the gloss black, right? And so this is a gloss black, which would be the foundation for graphite, and just, if I don't use graphite on other parts of it, just to sort of separate it from the rest of the piece so it's not just a wash of primer black, right? So here's the graphite. That's actually a sock on my hand, right? So, you know, I don't know about you, but in the sock drawer, plenty of single socks where they lost the mate. So I sacrificed this one to the graphite powder. And you see there, right? That just adds a lot of value for about, you know, a 30-second process. So the handlebars, these forks, and I know, like, too, it's like, it seems crazy because after all this work, I will go over and weather all that, so it's not even like I'm showing off how shiny that it is, right? So here I'm removing all the masking, right? So it's like, okay, starting to get a glimpse into what this thing is going to look like, right? So the demasking is a little better. So here I have my nail polish trick, I have buttons. Now, thanks to the smuggler's room, Brian over there, he kind of pointed out, he does all Star Wars builds. When he does his panels, it's all white and blue buttons, right? And I was like, oh yeah, he's right. So obviously these are not Star Wars styles buttons, but by doing them the blue and the white, it's sort of like a mental cue of like, oh yeah, like I know what that is. And I just love using nail polish for buttons and painting this sort of thing, right? So there they are. Again, that's going to get dampened way down, but that's like oddly familiar, right? We're like, okay, I know what that is. All right, so now the seat. Now, EVA foam is pretty readily available now. You can get, from a lot of places online, like some really cool foam, and even like from like Joann's Fabrics. But I have these old mats from back in the day, and this diamond pattern one, like I just cherish, like I just use it for things like this. It's just perfect. And I haven't been able to find it again. So this seat, all I have to do now, because I have that diamond pattern floor mat, I'm just going to cut out a shape that looks like a seat. And here I'm putting channels for the glue to go in. And sort of this is like almost free, right? Because this diamond patterned EVA foam, it makes it an interesting seat. And then I have like a little like small of the back piece there, which will make it look more like a chopper, like a bobber motorcycle. And here I'm just sealing the foam and sealing the edges. That just sort of like cleans it off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, go through. This is like a handsaw, mini saw. You just want places for the glue to go, right? Because when you do a smooth surface against a smooth surface, you're not giving the glue a chance to do what it needs to do, right? So in there, that's going to be all glue all the time, right? So, yeah, I just love the way that seat looks, right? It's just, every once in a while you catch a break, right? So it's just that pattern. If I ever find that foam again, I'll buy like 3 or 4 of them. And I think this is my last piece, but I was happy to use it on this. So now the dry brush, right? So much like the Mandalorian armor and all of the weapons that I did for this, so we're gonna do a silver dry brush. But before I do that, I have a couple dings that I put in this whole thing with my Dremel tool. I kind of imagine those like bullet hits. And typically if it was a smaller piece, what I would do is paint it silver, then put toothpaste on those and then paint it and wash it off. But because this thing was so massive, I just went through and just painted those in. And then now I'm taking like a metallic silver, a metallic red, and I think I also have, like I just showed you, I have a metallic gold. And I'm just patting this off. This just breaks up sort of the, especially because it's all black. You just want to breathe a little life into it, right? And then here I'm dry brushing, and you can see how the flat black is even flatter in some spots. So that's where I had to go back, where masking tape ripped it off. But because this thing is supposed to be so beat up, that kind of actually works in my favor. So there you see, again, when I show the close-ups of these metallic colors, you can see them, but when you're just looking at the whole thing in full frame and it's not the focus, it just really just makes it more interesting looking. And just that flat black is not good. So now we start getting into the layering. We put the matte clear because now I'm going to weather it and I don't want to make mud, right? So here I'm just doing a basic sludge wash. I just got some black acrylic paint, really watered down, and I'm just washing the whole thing down. And I say this all the time too. It's like when I do this sort of sludge wash weathering, the washes, you're really removing even more than 90% of it, right? But that little bit that remains is worth it. So here's my water-based oil paints, and I love these, and always the burnt umber. Why I really like it is I put this on thick, pull most of it off, and it gives me like that rusted look there. And I think you can really see it there on the front end of this, right? Again, just like little hits. So now again, we cover this with clear because we want to seal it in. And then now what I'm doing is this back cavity around the engine, I want to spray this with, it's like one of those texture spray paints. And this is something that I knew I was going to do. And the only reason I'm sharing this actually ended up not working out, but it's process, right? So, you know, you should be prepared for these things. So what I do is I spray this on there, and I had this great idea that, you know, it's going to be this textured, like pebbly paint in the back there. Made sense. But in the end, it didn't look that great. And then off camera, I ended up just hitting it, I think, with like Plastidip. I knew I wanted it to be flat black in there, but yeah, so process. And then also too, the masking tape, because it's plastic, it pulled off all of my silver paint. So now I go back and I did that with silver, and that ended up working fine. And I just ended up spray painting that. So here I have the Fuller's Earth, right? So this is kind of when I do the weapons, when I do the pigment powders. Fuller's Earth is like great for like when you're filmmaking and you want to make people dusty looking. And obviously, I mean, you could, I guess, go in the backyard and take handfuls of dirt, but this is a little more professional, a little more civilized. And then now I'm just going over it with the vacuum cleaner, and then you'll see, like, you know, the Fuller's Earth just stays in the crevices. And again, that's that 90% thing. That's what you want, right? So just sort of wiping this off. And then here, more masking. It's like, oh, geez, will it ever end? But again, another full masking job. And what I'm going to do here, and actually, it's like, you know, you can't lose steam now, because this is probably the most important and the most simple step. So because the speeder bike needs to be flying through the air, we got to paint the legs with a paint that I can key out so that we can give the illusion of this thing's floating, right? So that's all masked off again. And then all I'm doing now is just painting this. You can buy real chroma key paint, but that's like 40 bucks a can. But this is just like, I think like a spring green or something, and this will be fine for my purposes, right? So the legs are all chromed out, and what that allows me to do is, you know, once I film this, I can film an empty plate and the plate of this, and then I can just, with a simple keystroke, I can just erase these, right? So, and it gives you a nice delineation. And then here's the beauty shots, right? So there you can see out in natural sunlight, like I dare say I'm proud of this. Like, this came out really good. It was a really big project. It was daunting. And like I always say about these big projects, just, you know, one day at a time, one little bit at a time. And yeah, that looks really good. I can't wait to share this with you in the final film.
I mean, look at this thing. I mean, what in the... You can see I'm a big guy. This is not going anywhere. Oh. And you know, I've owned motorcycles my whole life, choppers, bobbers. So it was fun to be able to incorporate that into this build, right? So the other thing is, you know, how does this work, right? So with the green legs, the chroma key green, you can see sort of the delineation of like, this is the bike, right? So how does that work? So on the day, I'll put a green screen behind this in the desert location that I'll be filming in, and I'll chroma that out, and then I'll shoot plates, and then we'll do that, you know, and then we'll composite this onto that shot. So it'll be the same light, the same day. But on a simpler thing, I can just demonstrate real quickly, real basically, right? So this is a locked off shot, right? So we can easily get rid of these. So let me pull the frame. And as you can see there, I just simply keyed those out, and I earlier shot a static plate of the same shot as this, but it was locked off, so it made that easier. Well, as always, I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Love to read the comments, and be sure to check out the merch shop. Today, sporting the Evil Ted shirt, practicing what I preach. We got hats, shirts for my channel. And remember, I know it's a lot of Star Wars, but this is a COVID lockdown project, but I'm still just here to help make sci-fi.